Yo, yo, yo. Hey, crew. Skippy of the Skipper Report here. Welcome back to another episode. On this episode, I get to talk with Bevan Waite. He's the owner of Mountain Grown Media. He's a Telemark skier. He's an architect. And he's a filmmaker. And he's transitioning from being an architect into making filmmaking a full-time endeavor. So in this episode, we sit down, chat about all those things, plus what it's like to put together films. And so make yourself comfortable and enjoy this episode. I hate technology. Every time I go to do one of these things, I set everything up. Like I went to go on 40 minutes before 3 o'clock your time.
Yep.
And it took like almost the whole time. It was like just 5 minutes before everything all gelled together. I was like, and my wife knows me. I throw things. My bank was bugging me one day. The app wasn't working. The phone, my front of my phone is all smashed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
All right, that's good. I was just checking the sound stuff while we're talking here. So
Yeah, perfect. Tell me about your podcast.
I have lots of interesting conversations. My son-in-law, who's upstairs, you'll probably hear some noise because I'm presently in Windsor, just across the river from Detroit.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so I would have these conversations with people, and Eric calls me the been there, done that guy. And I haven't done a lot, but anyways, as I was an educator, I always told the kids, make sure you're educated enough and literate enough so that you can have interesting conversations with people. And I would have these interesting conversations, and I'm like, hey, this would be a great podcast topic. So my wife called me on it this year for Christmas and did a bunch of research and went to the local audio store. It's a national chain up here called Long and McQuaid. I don't know if they have it in the U.S.
Cool.
And the guy says, well, you did your homework. That's everything I would recommend. And so he put it all together.
Yeah.
And my wife goes, oh, that's expensive. He goes, well, why don't you do what us musicians do? We rent it until we like it.
Yeah, I do the same thing with camera gear, man.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I'll there's this great service, Lens Rental.
Okay.
And you can rent whatever.
Right.
From like high production quality equipment.
Right.
For like a matter of like a couple $100 for a weekend.
Right. Exactly.
And so I'll go off on a shoot and I'll like rent some equipment that I'm like thinking about buying, and I'll see if I like it or not, how it works with my camera and whatnot, and then decide, after the fact.
Right. Yeah. So that's what we did. I just added some monitor speakers because I prefer listening to speakers instead of headphones. And
oh my gosh, yeah, totally.
And it's all mobile, which is great because we have, I don't know what to call it yet. We have a 41-foot fifth wheel toy hauler.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big one too.
It is. Well, I'm 6'6". My kids are kind of tall. Wow. One of the boyfriends is tall. You need lots of room, right? And there's enough room for everybody to have their own space. And we don't have motorcycles in the toy hauler. We put paddle boards, ski equipment, bicycles.
Cool. Nice.
It's all human powered stuff. So it's like our gear hut, I guess. And we always go in and out of the garage door. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's lots of fun. And I was kind of hoping that we'd have it on a big trip this past winter. But this strange thing happened called COVID.
Yeah, they'll put a wrench in pretty much everyone's plans.
Yeah, and you know what? I just got to my cottage in Quebec for the first time in almost 2 years this past weekend.
Cool.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's my podcast. You know what? I was interviewing somebody I had listened to on another podcast. I don't know if you've ever heard of Out of Bounds podcast.
I haven't, but it sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah, I can't remember Adam's last name, but he's a ski geek, a cycling geek, that sort of stuff, and he's got a podcast. And this other guy was being interviewed, Adam Sauerwin, and he's a Telemark skier, Mr. Adam X on Instagram.
Cool, nice.
And so I was listening to one of his podcasts one day, and he told we kind of talk sometimes, and he said, yeah, I just kind of reached out to this person, and I was like, oh, maybe I should do that. So the first person I really reached out to who I didn't really know was Megan Kelly.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love Megan.
Oh,
she's so great.
Oh my gosh, she is like the bomb. Like when I found out, I knew she's in movies. I know she's the mom of triplet. They're probably 7-year-olds now.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah.
And she's a full-time civil engineer and a ski athlete. And I'm like, oh my God, where does she find the energy?
Yes, it's crazy. She is like one of the most driven people that I know. I don't talk with her often, but I have gone on a couple trips with her, and she's just like so on it all the time.
I bet.
Wanting to push it too, like is really capable and is willing to like push her own skiing.
Right.
Even though, she's not like a 20-something-year-old like athlete,
Yeah.
I'm in my late 20s now, and I'm feeling like I should probably slow down because I don't want to like get hurt. It's not like when I was 18 years old and I was like, oh, screw it, I'll just try this like new thing, and if I tomahawk and hit a tree, like I'll be fine,
No. Yeah, it's good that you're thinking about that now, because I'm 57 and I've just been thinking about that I'm 58 now. The last few years, and it's like my buddies will go, hey, let's do this. I was like, no, homie, don't do that anymore.
Homie, don't do that. Nice.
Because I have had so many sports injuries just, for putting out 110% effort.
Yeah.
And the last one that really finished me off is because I'm a carpenter also. I fell off my buddy's roof while I was building his garage, and I landed feet first, tucked and rolled, and my knee's not been the same since.
Oh,
yeah.
Man, that is rough. I
mean,
you think like landing feet first is probably better than landing, anything else first.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's a lot of impact, right?
It is. And I'm like 6'6", 280 pounds.
Oh gosh. Yeah. You got some momentum there. Huh?
Yeah. My daughter, who's a firefighter, she was with me, and there was a fence between us, and she couldn't really do anything. And she said, all you said, Dad, was, oh, here I go. And off the roof I went. So yeah, it was a little painful. It took me about 5 days to recover from that, but that was quite a few years ago. I would say like maybe 10 years ago, and my knee has really bothered me in the last few years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyways, but yeah, that's me and the podcast. So let's get on to you, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we've got Bevan Waite here on the Skippy Report. And we've just been talking a little bit, getting to know each other, because we've never really met, except that I do know that he's a filmmaker, a Telemark filmmaker. But other than that, tell us who you are, Bevan.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I grew up in California, in the Bay Area, South Bay, like kind of near Santa Cruz, and always, loved going to the mountains. And my dad was a Telemark skier, which I think is why a lot of us young people tele ski. One of my buddies, Ty, he was the same way. His grandpa and his dad were both tele skiers, and you kind of just pick it up that way, right? You're just like looking at your dad ski, and you're like, yo, dude, what's wrong with your heel? Yeah. That looks kind of like interesting. Maybe I want to try. And, I'm like a 7-year-old kid being like, this looks like kind of fun. And I think my dad was also thinking at that point in time, like, oh, maybe we should get Bevan on teleskis because he's getting pretty fast. He's starting to do 180s.
Right.
Like I don't know where he's going, where this road is going to lead him. So
slow him down for a
little bit. And I think that worked for about a year, but I just really fell in love with it. It became, like anything you do when you're a kid, you pick things up pretty easily.
Yeah.
And it sticks in your brain. There's something in your brain where it just like it gets cemented into your into just the way that you move. And
kids don't overanalyze stuff, because
right.
I am a carpenter, but I have a degree in phys ed.
Nice.
So cool. A lot of science, kinesiology, biomechanics, and all that stuff. So it's like when you try stuff and you start to get it, then you start analyzing it, and then you're all screwed up.
Right, you're overthinking things left and right. And
get out of your head.
They just kind of send it, and they go with what feels right. And it just became the way that I skied, right? Like I was always a young kid, like, in middle school and high school, going out with my friends, and they were all snowboarders, and I was just the dude on teleskis, and I always got questions like, "Why do you do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. I just do.
Right.
And it progressed, and I later in high school, I did a couple of Telemark comps, and oh man, the first comp that I did was pretty funny. I was all excited to like be involved in like the scene and whatnot, and seeing all the adults go was like this really cool thing. I was like, wow, I can't believe that these guys are hucking these huge cliffs and skiing these crazy lines. And I get up there to go ski my line, and this is the Alpine Meadows back in the day in the keyhole, and I make a couple turns down the keyhole, like some sketchy steep turns, and immediately just fall and like kind of tomahawk down the whole part of the face.
Wow.
and I get up and I ski back down there, and no one's cheering. They're all like, "Oh man, you okay, bro?" And I'm all down, but yeah, I got up there again and kind of just skied a little bit mellower line, and was able to ski the rest of my line well. And just the community was so great. It was just such a fun vibe to be involved in this like niche sport.
Right.
Where everyone was just so supportive and so jazzed about what they were doing. The competitions really they weren't like competitions. It was like a big party at like collaboration of all these teleskiers. And
I think that is what teleskiers do. That's like I raced smashing gates on telly and that sort of stuff, and you know what, it's like that. We get together, we compete against each other for a few minutes, and then afterwards, we're all out there having fun. It's like curling.
Yes, I love that.
Oh, do you?
Really do.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't know if they have the same rules in the U.S., but the winners have to buy the losers the beer in Canada.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
I didn't know that
I think that's what Telemark skiing is, man.
Yeah.
We all have that vibe afterwards. Yeah, we go out and compete, we have fun, and then we all get together afterwards, right?
Yeah, except instead of beer, it's weed.
Right. Yep. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're in middle school, I think you were saying, and you were competing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've always been telemark skiing and that sort of stuff. So where did you go in between that and what I know of you now being a filmmaker?
Yeah, totally. Well, there's kind of a long several years that passed in between like my high school, I wouldn't want to say career, but the few times that I competed in high school. And I went to college and studied architecture, and architecture is a very intense major. It's fun to do, but there's a lot of work. And the first year I think I skied like twice.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy because I was like so into skiing as a high school student. Excuse me. And as that progressed, I met some people that were good skiers, and we would go up to Mount Hood a lot and Mount Bachelor. And I just, I skied around and had a good time and did my schoolwork, eventually graduated in my 5th year. And at that point I was like, oh my gosh, I just need to move to the mountains.
Right.
However, I had been offered a job at an architecture firm, and it was a little hard to turn down, especially after going to school and paying to like basically work. When someone offers to pay you to work, you're like, wait a second, that's amazing. And so I did that for about 18 months. And at the end of the 18 months, I was like, I can't stand it. I need to move to the mountains. I need to be a ski bum. Like, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it in my entire life. And so I did it. I bought a van, and
that's that the green fly-low van that we see on
the green machine, Bubba, we call it.
What do you call it?
Bubba. Yeah, kind of like a cool but derpy in a way,
Well, you know what? It's more appealing than Josh Madson's black Freeheel Life van. I don't even know if it's on the road anymore, but it's like, you know what? If you see that in the neighborhood, lock up your children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hide your kids, hide your wife. Yeah, and so I moved up to Tahoe in that green van and just spent one season there is actually all it took. It was 2017, and Trump had just gotten elected. I moved up to Tahoe, and I didn't have any friends, and that happened, and I was just like, oh God, what's like the world's going to shit. And then it just started snowing, and it snowed 30 feet
Oh,
in
it
January.
it pukes there. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's so like bipolar. I guess I would say is we have years where it's just unbelievable, like too much, you
Right.
know. And it's hard to deal with. It's actually sometimes hard to ski because it's just constantly snowing,
Right.
and the avalanche danger is constantly high or extreme. And it's sometimes it's not always good snow too. It's like
Well,
wet
that's
snow,
what I
or
was
it's
going to
like
ask because my friend Jarl, I don't know if you know Jarl Berg. He's up in Eugene, Oregon,
yeah,
and I talk to him a lot. And it seems like well, it's West Coast Cement or something like that. They call it
yeah, Sierra Cement. Yeah,
Sierra
there you go.
Cement. Okay, yeah. So it
And Cascade Concrete. So they're all the same thing, but just different mountain ranges.
and we just call that shit out here.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it seems like. But yeah, it snowed 30 feet in January
Wow.
and 30 feet in February,
Whoa.
8 feet in March,
I wonder if
12 feet in April,
wow.
and then I think it was about done. But it was the wildest season I had ever experienced. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, is this what it's like to live in Tahoe?
Wow.
Turns out it's not.
Right.
It's only sometimes like that. But yeah, that one season, it was funny. I had all these like hopes and dreams to like, you know, like be a part of the Tele community and be an influential school like skier in the Tele community. And what I realized was like as soon as I moved to Tahoe, it all kind of just like happened. It's just everyone is there and doing the same thing, and there's so many people skiing and performing in the sport in such a high level and way more than just tele skiers,
Right.
like
It's
and
like
so
build it and
just
they will come.
yeah, you just become part of the local community.
That's cool.
And that's really what I fell in love with was that local community of skiers, tele skiers, alpine skiers, snowboarders, all alike. I definitely gravitated to working with Ty and skiing with Ty a bunch, which is where those movies came out of it.
Yeah. And
The
I'm so
film
glad.
thing,
I'm so glad that you guys
yeah,
have done that.
yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that there are people out there that appreciate that because when I was growing up, I was an avid follower of Powder Horse
Yeah.
and Tough Guy Productions
Yeah.
and Unparalleled.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those guys made movies that literally led me to be doing everything that I've done in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And to kind of see that disappear
Yeah.
was sad,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and that was right around that time that Powder wrote that article about teleskiing being dead.
Yep.
And then there was a huge backlash, right? And now Powder's dead, which is hilarious to me. Um, yeah, it felt good for Ty and I to do that, I think. And as much as I think we made like two movies together, and I've been wanting to do a third. I have not yet gotten to it. It's been a interesting time for me. I ended up changing my whole career. I really fell in love with filmmaking, and almost as much as I did with skiing. It became this fun thing, and it became something that I really gravitated towards,
Right.
and realized seemed like was more of a right path for me than architecture, and it was more in line with my lifestyle at the
Right. Yep.
time. And so I kind of ran with it. And since then, obviously we had COVID,
Yeah.
and COVID's still going on. But when it started, it was a huge slap in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. Like everybody's ski season ended, right? That was
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And for me, like I had just started Mountain Ground Media,
Right.
like 4 months before that.
Oh, jeez.
And quit my job and committed to it. I was like, I am good enough at this now. I have, I've worked with Flylo for the last several years, and Flylo was like my biggest client at the time. And I was like, I think I can make this work.
Right.
And so I quit my job and I just did that full time. And then 4 months later, the country shut down and the economy crashed, and people just didn't know what to do, didn't know what was going to happen, and that really it did good and bad things for me. Mostly good, I would say. It really like pushed me to figure out my situation,
right?
And to build a business and expand my network for filmmaking, in order to continue to make it, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't about to go get another job in architecture. That would be kind of a difficult thing to explain my way back
right
into a position like that. And that it also kind of facilitated a distancing of my mission from making these telemovies into making money, making film projects.
Right.
And not to, I have nothing but love for the tele industry, but it is not an industry where you can, as a filmmaker, make a living.
It'd be like a friend of mine who's a race car driver and coach. It's like, how do you make $1 million in car racing? Start with 2 million.
There you go. And you lose $1 million and there's your $1 million. Yeah. It's similar to that. And I love tele skiing and I love the tele community. But at that time in my life, I just had to make things work. And so I ended up gravitating to doing more commercial like film work.
Right.
And have since gotten, had a decent amount of success doing that, and have gotten really, really busy.
Nice.
And that's a great thing. But at the same time, I would really love to make that third tele movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? We'd all love to see you make it, man.
I think Ty's coming out with a movie this fall as well.
Right.
So there is something to look forward to.
Oh, good.
There.
Good.
Yeah.
How did you and Ty meet? Like up at Tahoe?
Yeah. It was a comp thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I met him, I think, at the Grand RE telecomp.
Yeah.
I don't remember what year. But, whatever. We're all homies. We're all kind of ski around and are pushing each other and whatnot, and learning from each other. And when I moved to Tahoe, I hit him up and I was like, hey, I live in Tahoe now. Like, we should ski together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we started skiing together. And he's a cool guy. He just had a baby.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
He's making his life work, and I love it. Him and Savannah are such nice, warm, loving people, and Ty's such a badass, like on skis and like in every other aspect of life.
Right.
He crushes it. He like drops trees, builds trails, fights fires.
Well, I know. I was just showing a friend of mine his Facebook post from maybe 2 years ago at nighttime where he's fighting a fire.
Yeah.
And just saying how hot it was. And my buddy was like, what? Couldn't believe it. It's like, yeah, you have to be badass to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I couldn't believe, so Savannah just had the baby, and when the Caldor fire was moving through South Lake or very, very close to South Lake, Ty's a firefighter. I think he was like trying to manage his wife's contractions while this fire was like a mile from their house.
Oh, that close.
And
wow.
Yeah. I mean, they had to evacuate, and I was sitting there sweating, checking the fire map, like every hour. I was out in Seattle. I was visiting family at the time. And that's like, all I could think about was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, I cannot believe that I have friends in South Lake right now that are going through this such momentous part of their lives, and they're having to deal with this evacuation notice. And at the time, before we knew what was going to happen, it just seemed like South Lake was going to burn down, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, props to him for making it work and being there for his wife and now his family, and fighting fire.
It's intense. You know what? Like, I tell a lot of people, and don't know, I interview a lot of people who are Americans and that sort of stuff. And so I try to be well balanced. I watch a Canadian national news, I watch the local news, and then I'll watch American news. And I just kind of sit there and go, what did you guys do? You got tornadoes, hurricanes, forest fires, some presidents that we won't name.
Oh yeah,
and it's like
equally as bad as a natural disaster, if not more so.
And it's like, what did you guys do to deserve this? And like my family, part of my family are American. They're from Vermont.
Yeah,
And back in the day, and it's like, you know, we live up here in Canada. It's pretty benign.
Yeah.
You know, we have a pretty even climate. My daughter living in, you know, across the river from Detroit, you know, this year is the first time. It's like, yeah, man, Dad, I got tornado warnings on my phone. I said, well, get the baby, get some stuff, get underneath the stairs and just chill until it passes. You know, it's, you know, we don't get hit by tornadoes very often.
Yeah.
I think we did have a hurricane that came up through like back in the 1950s in the Toronto area. Yeah. Like, and we have forest fires, but because we're sparsely populated, they don't address them, you know, they just let them burn out.
Which is honestly, it's a very, I'm not super educated on the intricacies of the problem, but it is a very complicated issue with fires that humans have kind of created on themselves. You know?
Right. Yeah.
We have created all these communities in the mountains, specifically, you know, in the western part of the United States, that are just at risk of burning down, like always.
Yeah.
And because of that, we're fighting these fires so hard to stop them from spreading the way that they would naturally spread, that it's causing the, you know, the underbrush and the fuel in the lower parts of the forest to just collect and collect and collect, so that when we do have a fire, they're catastrophic.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it's a complicated problem, because it's like, you can't tell people to just be like, let it burn, when it's their house that's going to burn down.
Right. Exactly. I know it's, you know what, it's, my wife and I will watch some stuff, and it's like, you know, we follow some people on YouTube or something like that. They're building a house. I'm kind of thinking near Park City, and it's like, it's forest fire area. Why would you build a house there? You know, like my brother-in-law, he lives in northwestern Ontario on Lake Superior. Well, there's lots of forest fires in northwestern Ontario. So he built a house to try to be as, you know, so it wouldn't burn down. So the siding on it is concrete. It's got a steel roof, you know, that sort of stuff, just in case, you know. And but like you said, and you guys have 10 times the population we do in a smaller landmass. So it becomes a problem. Yeah, for sure.
But you know, the snow eventually comes, and it kicks out all the fires, and we get to have fun and ski again. And
for
and
sure.
We're in that time of the year right now where, you know, I'm praying for snow every time I see a little system coming through. I'm like, ooh, is this going to be one where we're going to see the first snow? I have bets out with some of my friends about when the first snow in Tahoe is going to be.
Right.
And we've had several little systems that have come through and just rained a little bit.
Right.
But it looks like it's like on the cusp. We're like, oh man, we're going to see the snow flurries. Like, who's going to win this bet? Are we all going to lose?
Right. So how tall are the mountains out at Tahoe?
They top out at around 9 grand.
Okay.
There's a few that are above that.
Right. I was just curious because I saw Snowbird. They had snow this week, and 2 weeks ago, I think Whistler had snow up at the top.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, they always have that sort of glacier thing that's up there that people go and train on.
And in Colorado, like the Intercontinental Mountains, you know, out there they always have like an early season.
Right.
We're always jealous in California. We're like, what? You guys get to ski like a month and a half before us.
So when generally do the people around Tahoe get to ski?
Yeah, you know, I would say it's probably about mid-November.
Oh, okay. That's like Jay Peak in the east. That's not far from my cottage. I consider that my home mountain.
Yeah.
And
I'll put it
they're
this way.
always ready
Yeah.
to go for Thanksgiving. They have a couple of runs ready.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the same here where they start making snow uh, like mid-October to mid-November, and we generally get, enough of a snowstorm to open like a couple runs.
Right.
Um, it's not always good, but then again, we sometimes get uh, systems that come in like mid-November or early December, and it's dirt everywhere,
Oh,
and then it drops 8 feet of snow.
oh man.
And it just transforms the landscape into this winter wonderland. I mean, like every time it snows, it kind of transforms landscapes, but like this is like so extreme because it looks like it's still summer,
Right.
and then it just disappears, and you have these like pillowy, bulbous boulders that are just these crazy formations that you only see early season, and we call that zero to hero.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, because it's like it goes from no skiing to let's huck
Yeah,
cliffs, let's go ski cool lines and whatnot.
Oh, pretty. That's cool, man. Yeah, I've never skied out on the West Coast. I did ski the 1st of August on, it's in Washington. It's the floating mountain there in the north.
Crystal?
No, it's, oh, geez, I can't remember the name of the mountain.
Mount Baker?
Yeah, Mount Baker. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we went out west for a family reunion and a wedding for my wife's family, and I said, well, I'd like to ski.
Yeah.
So we went out there, and the girls surfed in Tofino, and then
Wow.
the next day I wanted them to take their snowboards because they're boarders, but my wife was like, well, I don't know what the snow is going to be like, but it was like, it was easy. And
Nice.
yeah, I took my gear and walked up and down and just skied, and they actually sledded on their boards.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is Tofino on Vancouver Island? Is that where
It is? Yeah, that's where all the surfers like to go. So
sweet.
yeah,
Yeah, I've always because my family's from Seattle. They live up there now. I've always been curious, like, if I was to move to Seattle ever, like, where would I, like, how would I do the surfing thing? Because I grew up by the ocean and I was a big surfer. I don't know how I became so much better of a skier than a surfer because I think I put a lot more time into surfing.
Right.
In my childhood. It was just a lot closer.
Yeah, because Seattle, when you think about it, even though it's on water and that sort of stuff, it's inland a fair amount because you got the Olympic Peninsula or the Olympia Peninsula.
Yeah, exactly. And all the archipelago islands, and then Vancouver Island is really the coast. It's like the peninsula and Vancouver Island.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of, because when we went out west, when we retired, we did a big trip out through Canada, back through the U.S., and we were on Vancouver Island, and there's an area I think it's called Jordan, and it's about halfway up. You don't have to go as far as Tofino. Everybody loves to go to Tofino to surf, but there's a big surfing crowd about midway up.
Cool.
Yeah, that would probably be the closest place.
Yeah.
For somebody from Seattle, unless you head straight out west across the peninsula. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was when we did our trip, it was really cool. We were visiting my wife's cousin in Beaverton, and I mentioned to my wife, I said, I'd like to see a Pacific sunset, because when we were here in 2007, we never really did. So we beetled it, and I didn't realize that we were still like 2 hours from the coast.
Yeah, right.
But it was perfect. We got to this place called Pacific City, walked across all the dunes. There was nobody there. And then as the sun starts to descend, all of these people come out of the woods to the dunes and watch the sunset. Yeah, it was pretty intense. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. I lived in Vancouver for a little bit.
Vancouver.
Yep.
In Washington or Vancouver, Canada?
In BC.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
I did a study abroad there. Even though I went to University of Oregon, it was only a couple hours north.
Yeah, yeah.
Not really abroad, but it was a fun little program that we did, and we stayed in downtown Vancouver, and it was crazy, man. Like the sunsets there, you think of Vancouver as like Seattle, like it's cloudy all the time.
Yeah.
It's especially like springtime, it's like supposed to rain all the time. And it did. It definitely rained all the time. But there was this weird thing that happened that it would like rain around the city. It would be cloudy all day long. And just offshore, um, there would be like no clouds. And at the very end of the day, the sun would pop underneath the clouds
Wow.
for a matter of like minutes,
Yeah.
you know, and light up the entire underbody of these rain
Oh,
clouds
that's intense.
in this crazy pink. And this would just, it would happen like on the regular.
Yeah.
It was this weird experience where I was like, it's cloudy all day, every day, but we get these crazy, insane sunsets.
Yeah. Very cool. So I have some questions about your filmmaking and skiing and all that sort of stuff. So how do you go about recruiting your cast? How long does it take to make your films? Because I was able to take my students one year for a day to the Toronto International Film Festival. They have a building called the Bell Blue Light Building or something like that, and they have an educational program. So we worked with an editor, and it was intense. All the different shots that we would have to do over and over again. We were there for like 6 hours. And at the end of it, the guy sent us a DVD, and there's 30 seconds. So we spent 8 hours. And that's when I realized how important film editors are.
Yes, totally. I would say the editors of film have a lot of control in terms of how the film comes out, and that's for a variety of reasons. It's for the structure of how the film unfolds. It's for the music choice of that goes into the films, and then the audio of like, you know, who's talking and how they get cut together, and who says what when, and all that stuff. I mean, in terms of like casting, it's for ski films. I guess I have two answers for this, right? Because like when I started doing this, it was really just like friends of friends. You know, it was Ty and I that went out and we're like, okay, we'll make a video together.
Right.
And whoever we run into along the way, we're, you know, if they're cool tele skier, like we're going to try to get them in the film. So like Sven, for example, was in the Japan segment of the Telemark Tale. Sven's this awesome Aussie, and he was working for Ski Japan at the time as a guide.
Right.
And so he was our quote unquote guide / friend. It was just like telling us where to go, like showing us the cool places. And so we wanted him to be in the film. And so we got him in there. And then I think a couple of the other guys, Josh Madsen organized this like Telemark get together for like the Free Heel Life team back in the day.
Right.
And so that was like another thing where we got together with a bunch of these tele skiers right before the comp and did a little filming segment. And so those people were kind of already handpicked by Josh. And then the comp, you know, everyone that is, you know, competitive in the tele world pretty much go to the comps. And oh man, what was the last? I think it was just the Tahoe segment, and then it's just Ty and his friends, you know.
Yeah.
And in our next movie, we didn't have a female athlete in the first movie. And so the next movie, we got a lot of questions like, where's the female athlete? And so we were thinking about like, who's the female athlete that we want to highlight, but is also in Tahoe. And now it's just easy. I mean, it's Megan, you know? And she has such a cool story with her kids and with her job and, you know, just still pushing it skiing and being like a part of that whole vibe. It's
I know, she told me she grew up just outside of Detroit also. She skied this place called Mount Brighton. So, you know, I ski similar places in Eastern Ontario like that. And then she was telling me she played soccer for Cornell University, I think. And then she knew exactly. She'd cross over into Canada, drive down to Buffalo through Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, and then truck on down into New York to go to Cornell. It's like, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Where you start off and where you end up.
Yeah. one of the funny things that she told me in interviewing her and hanging out with her a little bit was Brighton, I believe, is a dump, or it's like a mountain of trash.
Landfill site, I think.
Yeah, there you go, land.
Somebody corrected me one time. I was like, "Oh yeah, you ski in a dump." No. I ski in a landfill.
Yeah, so it's just like a landfill, and it just makes enough of a hill that they can like.
My daughter's been there when they first moved here to Windsor. It's like there's no ski hills here. So where do you go? They go over to Michigan, and they ski these little bumps, you know. So yeah, I know out west in Saskatchewan they ski the ditches. That's what they call it. So it's, that's right, down into the valleys, and that you know what, we do a fair amount of skiing like that. There's quite a few ski resorts in Ontario where you can park at the top and you ski down to the chalet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty funny. You know, there's a ski resort here in California like that too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Well, it's not totally like that, but there's a lot of like the cool part of the mountain is lower than where you park.
Right.
I think Powder Mountain might be like that as well in Utah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's always a funny thing. You're like, wait, I'm like at elevation right now and I'm skiing down.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how long did it take you to, or does it take you to film your movie? Like how much total time? Several weeks?
Yeah, well, it depends, right?
Unless you're traveling.
Or like, yeah, for a whole movie, I mean, if we're talking about like a 10-minute segment, that could be one trip. So that could be like a matter of a week.
Right.
And that would just be filming for it, not necessarily editing. The movies that Ty and I were working on, they were like whole season endeavors.
Okay, that's what I was kind of figuring,
Yeah, because it's like multiple trips. And it doesn't mean that we're filming 8 hours a day every day.
Right.
It's not like a full-time job, but like we have to be kind of on top of it with like following the weather, getting together enough times during good weather to get enough shots. You know, a lot of the ways that these movies are made these days, a lot of like, you know, bigger budget ski films too, like the Blank Collective films, you know, it's not just one filmer, it's like 15 filmers, and it's really like just the athletes filmers that go out with the athletes on the days that are good to get the shots that then get conglomerated into a mass of all of this footage and trip footage and individual shots, and it kind of gets like mashed together in the best way possible. And the second year I went out filming with Ty like maybe like a couple times, but a lot of the shots were like shot by other people, you know, and I kind of just edited it.
Okay.
And so like, yeah, it becomes like hard to coordinate sometimes, especially when people have like jobs or other responsibilities. And then like you can't ever choose the weather, right?
Exactly.
So it snows when it snows, and when it snows, you got to go.
Yeah.
And Ty always used to say, if we got one shot a day, then that was a successful day.
Okay. That sounds like a full-time job just to do that.
Honestly, it's a lot of work.
It is. You know what? I would just because they're in Vermont. I don't know if you've ever heard of the guys who Ski the East.
Oh yeah, totally.
And they had, I don't know if they still do, Meathead Films, and you know, they were getting into some new school kids and doing stuff, and then at the end of the DVDs they would have all the takes, and it, you know, you don't realize that it takes these guys 30 times before they nail the landing, you know. It's something, it's like, whoa, and then at the end of the film it's like, oh my gosh, or somebody's got their face all gashed up afterwards.
Right, especially street skiing. Street skiing is more like skateboarding, you know. It's like they're trying all these crazy things, they're setting up all these crazy, you know, scenarios, right? And
and they've got that, I don't know what that high-speed pulley is with like a water ski rope or something. They get up to speed and then they throw it out, and then they can just
yeah, totally. It's It's so funny. Or the bungee cords too, right?
Right.
I've heard those bungee cords are pretty dangerous actually, because you have to like stretch them back, and then when you grab them, they're the strongest.
Right.
So I've heard those can go wrong pretty often. I don't know. I'm not much of a street skier, but I always I have really wanted to film the street skiing. To be honest, I don't know if Ty would be into it anymore. I think he's moving more. He's moved to the backcountry
Right.
primarily, but it would be fun to do that with a tele skier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Where I grew up, it was pretty flat. So we scajored with a snow machine.
Nice.
I got into my
Awesome.
uncle's ski boots and his skis and with a water ski rope, and that's the way we
Yeah.
went.
Oh gosh. I mean, if you can make turns, you can make turns, right?
You know what? That's what I say all the time. We would have snow days. I don't know if they have snow days in Tahoe at school, but where school's canceled, or they don't
Yeah.
cancel our school. They'll cancel the buses. Hang on a second. My daughter's cat is jumping on the equipment here. Come here, dummy.
Oh, hey.
This is Dude.
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 What's up, dude?
Yeah, she's got Dude and then another one called Charlie, which I call Chuck Norris. And then they got a pain in the ass German short hair pointer named Axel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I call him asshole. But yeah, anyway, so they'll cancel the buses, but they won't cancel school. So we'll have a handful of kids come, and they always know that I've skied because we have this great boulevard with well-spaced trees, and I'll figure eight the trees, and they'll come back the next day, and I'll do that on my lunch hour.
Yeah.
And they come back the next day and go, "You were skiing, right?" And then one time I had this dad yell out the door, "Are you Mr. Woods?" I was like, "Yes." Sierra said you'd probably be out skiing tonight. And that's like right in town. It's a couple of 100 yards long, and doesn't matter where you make a turn as long as you get in your turns.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. That is for sure.
Yeah, cool. So I want to know, because I love architecture.
Yeah.
And I was interviewing Corey Schneider. He's a retired captain of the U.S. Telemark World Cup team.
Yeah, I know Corey, not well, but I've met him before when it comes.
Okay. Anyways, so he's in Austria right now. He may have finished his PhD in biomechanics. Anyway, so we were talking about stuff because when I was in university, history is my minor.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a paper on the the development and evolution of the pointed arch in Gothic architecture.
Oh, nice. I think I wrote a similar paper in school, something like that.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and I had no interest in traveling to Europe until I wrote that paper. And then Corey says, "Yeah, like right behind my apartment, there's he's in Salzburg. He says there's a cathedral that has, when it was the year it was built, only has 3 digits."
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty.
That's incredible.
So, what sort of architecture did you do? Were you interested in? Still interested in?
Yeah, totally. In school you kind of learn. I would explain architecture school like a design school with a focus on buildings.
Okay.
It starts out so artsy. You're not even like designing spaces or anything. They told you to do all these like things like, tie strings around trees or like make things out of clay, and you're like, how is this like architecture, right? But then it slowly kind of morphs into more of a building specific learning process. And I don't know, I learned about all different types of architecture. We had architectural history classes, we had architectural theory classes, we had classes that talked about the context of architecture in the environment and in social lives and in all these different kind of aspects of the human experience. And I was really drawn to like modern architecture,
right,
which seems pretty standard, but I don't know, there's something about the simplicity of modern architecture that just makes sense. It's like form and function just go so well together that the art and the beauty of the space is also in the way that you use it and move through it, and the way that it makes you feel. there was a time in school where I was very attracted to like the craziest of the crazy,
Right.
sculpture like buildings,
Yeah.
right?
I know we have some in Mississauga, which is I'm going to say a borough of Toronto, whereas as the building goes up, it looks like a salt shaker, actually. In the middle of the building is a wider than the top and the bottom, and it's off center. You know, it's very, very fluid. Yeah, it's.
Right.
I think there are two buildings that make up that building complex. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there was something that attracted me to like the sculpture-esque nature of certain buildings, and just having the actual building be a piece of art, just like any cathedral, you know, in Europe. Like the cathedral is like, why put so much detail and hundreds of years into these things? Well, because it's a piece of art, because they still exist today, you know. And the average life for a modern building, like the building that I'm in right now, you know, the average life for buildings like this is like about 40 years.
Okay.
Until they get demolished and rebuilt, which is hugely unsustainable, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, buildings that were built 100 years ago were meant to like live for, you know, as long as they possibly could. And buildings now are built cheaply. They're built fast. They're built for, you know, profit. And you know, I don't know where I'm going with that really, but what I really like about architecture is the ability for it to change the human experience, to really create emotion out of space. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that that's really what architecture does. It designs your lifestyle, right? When you walk into a hospital, for example, like, where do you go? How do you get there? The architecture is telling you that, you know, and there's signage, and they're really very complicated buildings and whatnot. But everything about how you move through the built environment has an effect on you. And that's honestly what I fell in love with architecture at the time. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm a creature of the modern age, and I kind of like the modern look, but I absolutely appreciate and enjoy kind of all periods of architecture. You know, I love the Art Deco look. I love Gothic architecture. I love like Native American architecture.
Oh yeah.
The way that they just use their materials for the most functional space, but then also the way in which their spirituality was brought into the way that they designed their stuff.
Exactly. You
know? I think that speaks to how much architecture touches lives and touches emotion, you know, because spirituality is so ingrained in classic architecture.
Yeah.
Even up till the modern age, but less so now. But, you know, back in history, that's what architecture was, you know, like the greatest feats of architecture were all religious buildings.
Exactly. Yep. They were building them higher and taller to get closer to God.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know what? It's interesting when you're through your explanation and all that right now, you remind me of a professor of mine when I did my Bachelor of Education. I took a few courses from him, and one of them was Human Dimensions in Education. But he also talked about human dimensions and things and buildings being built to human scale. Like he believed that a school should not have more than 400 students in it. Anything bigger than that, there's no, it's kind of like you're not just a number sort of thing, you know, above that. And then I also noticed through my travels, the most appealing towns to me, and I live in a pretty old town in Port Hope in Ontario here. It has the oldest downtown main street in Ontario. Mm-hmm. So they come to Port Hope to film a lot of older movies and that sort of stuff. But I noticed that a lot of the buildings or the towns that I appreciate being in, their main streets and stuff aren't more than 3 stories tall.
Yep.
You know, that sort of thing. It's... Yeah, so I understand how you were explaining.
Yeah. And you just remind me of something as well, that you look at Europe, and not even just Europe, but anywhere where humans have lived for thousands of years. Well, I guess now I'm catching myself in that statement. Humans have lived everywhere on the planet for thousands of years, but where there have been cities that have developed and still exist today.
Right.
And Europe is a very good example of that. You see this organic growth
Right.
of the city.
Yeah.
And if you look at like a plan, like a bird's eye view of the city, it looks like an organism.
Right.
There's no straight street that goes clear across the city from one end to the other. It doesn't work like that. There's just all these crisscrossing things. There are always little nooks and crannies, and there are these squares that are like kind of dotted around throughout the city. And there's like urban pockets. So like if you live somewhere, you don't have to walk more than a couple blocks to get everything you need to see. You get a pharmacy, to get your food, to do any such things. Whereas in America, America is a new age development. The whole country is.
Right.
In the last 100 years or 200 years, like the entire country has been developed, and it has been entirely built with the intention of the automobile. Like the automobile changed the entire way that we see the way that spaces are connected.
Right.
And so like, the whole, in the middle of this past century, there was this huge boom of suburbs, and there was a large crisis actually of suicides because people were so disconnected from their communities. They had their little white picket fence, and they were miles and miles away from their grocery store. They didn't know their neighbors. They didn't live anywhere close to where they worked. They were just isolated. And that you don't see that in European and Eastern European communities.
Yeah. See, I grew up in the suburbs of Montreal, and I could take public transit, bus, and then the subway, and in 20 minutes be in downtown Montreal. I grew up most of my life in being a kid without a vehicle. I always said we were the bussing people. We would walk to the grocery store, and when we had too many groceries, we'd take a cab home. We even went camping from Montreal. We went down to Plattsburgh, New York on the Greyhound bus.
Yeah.
And I asked my dad, I said, how did we get that trunk of camping gear to the campground? Because there was 5 of us in my family. I don't think he could recall, but I'm going to probably think it was like a station wagon taxi or something like that. And then a week later, my grandparents would come down. They had a station wagon. Then 7 of us would go home with all the camping gear strapped to the top. But yeah, I understand being close. We could walk to get everything that we needed.
Yeah, exactly.
And and I'm going to hypothesize that even today, there's little tiny grocery stores that have, when I was growing up, they had them young kids, guys, 16, 17 years old, delivering groceries on bicycles with big baskets in the front. And
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And that's
what a cool job to have as a kid, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I understand that sort of European close community that we don't see. Like I tour by bicycle. I've done Lake Ontario 4 times.
Yep.
And I tell you, here in Canada, when we take the byways, there are grocery stores along the byways for us to pick up our food for the next day and that night's supper. But when we're in New York, we have to pretty much go 25 miles out of our way, leave the lake, and go up to where all the box stores are up by the interstate, get our groceries, and then come back to the campground. It's it's like after you put in 100 miles, you got to go 25 more miles to get your groceries.
Right. I know. It's crazy. It's we've designed a world that has created all these problems that we're now dealing with.
Right.
And Yeah, it was a little bit of a depressing thing to learn about sometimes. You know, we had this architectural context class that was just like, we fucked up.
Yeah. And you know what? In
And
Canada is even worse.
yeah,
You know, people say, well, why does it cost so much for us to take like the train to Vancouver? It's like, well, we only have 1/10 the population of the U.S.,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
or 1/100th of what they have in Europe.
right,
And we have to go, you know, 10 times the distance.
right.
You know, yeah, it's just the way North America is. It's the new frontier still, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Instead of chuck wagons, it's interstates and big highways. So
Yeah, man.
so what's next
What is
for
next?
Bevan and
Well,
Mountain Grown Media?
let's see, man. You know, I mentioned that I want to do a third Telly movie. I think that will happen probably within the next couple of years.
Cool.
Mountain Grown Media. Yeah, I have like goals of finding other clients in the outdoor industry. My dream for Mountain Grown Media is to, you know, turn it into a small company that can support a couple people that love what they do, are passionate about how they live, and their, you know, their own art, I guess, and you know, telling captivating, important stories beyond teleskiing. You know,
Yeah,
it's not teleskiing is not the end all be all for
that's right.
me. It is a pathway that I've taken to become more connected to a mountain community, to come into contact with some wonderful people along the way. And through that, I've been able to, you know, realize that there's stories in the world that need to be told,
Yep.
that the world can benefit from hearing, and I want to, and I hope to be able to tell some of those stories
Cool.
at some point. What those stories are, I don't know yet, but
Right.
I'm sure that I will stumble across them when I do.
Cool. Cool. Well, I want to thank you for being part of the Skippy Report.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate your time, and
Yeah.
thank you. I didn't know if this was going to happen on my end because I had so many technical difficulties
Yeah.
coming up to it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm sorry for delaying it a couple times, but I'm really glad that we were able to connect, Keith.
yeah, no, this has been awesome. So, thanks so
Yeah.
much for taking the time and being a guest here.
Yeah, likewise. Stay in contact with me, you know.
Yeah,
through
yeah,
Instagram
for sure.
and email and whatever. I'll be around.
Well, there you have it, gang. Another episode of the Skippy Report down. Thanks again to Bevan Waite for being our guest this week. And if you need to get in touch with him, you want to follow him, find him on Instagram at Powderlicious. And check out his company, man. MountainGrownMedia.com. Thanks again for listening. And check back later for another report.